Part 1. The Traffic Stop. The afternoon sun was beating down hard on the highway that day. Jimmy Crawford, a 73-year-old man with gray hair and tired eyes, was driving his old pickup truck carefully. He wasn't in a hurry. At his age, he'd learned that rushing never got you anywhere good. Jimmy had just left the VA hospital about 30 miles back. In his passenger seat sat a plain white envelope. Inside that envelope was $8,500 in cash. Every single dollar represented years of careful saving, cutting corners, and living simply. This money wasn't for something fancy. It was for his wife, Helen. She needed surgery, and they needed to pay the hospital up front. The doctors had explained it all last week. Helen's condition was serious, and they couldn't wait for insurance approvals and paperwork. Cash payment meant they could schedule the surgery for next week. So Jimmy had gone to his bank that morning, withdrawn everything they had, and drove to the VA for his regular checkup. Now he was heading home, just wanting to get that money safe and sound. He didn't see the police car behind him at first. When the red and blue lights flashed, Jimmy's heart sank.
What had he done wrong?
He'd been going exactly the speed limit. He always did. He checked his mirrors, put on his turn signal, and pulled over to the shoulder slowly and carefully. Officer Derek Lansing stepped out of his patrol car with a swagger. He was a big man, about 40 years old, with a thick neck and sunglasses that hid his eyes. He'd been having a slow day and he was bored. When he spotted the old pickup truck with an elderly black man behind the wheel, something clicked in his mind. Old people driving alone sometimes carried cash. It was worth checking out. Derek walked up to the driver's window and tapped on it hard. Jimmy rolled it down immediately, his hand shaking slightly, not from guilt but from age and the medication he took for his nerves. "License and registration," Derek said flatly, not even bothering with a greeting. "Yes, sir, officer," Jimmy replied respectfully. He'd been taught long ago to always be polite with police. He'd served in Vietnam, came back to a country that didn't always treat him fairly, and he'd learned to be careful. His hands trembled as he reached for his wallet. "Why are your hands shaking?" Derek asked, his tone immediately suspicious. "I'm elderly, sir. I have a condition. I take medication," Jimmy explained softly. Derek took the license and looked at it. Then his eyes drifted to the passenger seat. There, plain as day, was that white envelope. It was slightly open and Derek could see the green of cash inside. "What's in the envelope?" Derek asked. Jimmy's stomach tightened. "That's my money, officer. I just withdrew it from the bank for my wife's surgery." "Uh-huh," Derek said, not believing a word. "Step out of the vehicle." Jimmy did as he was told. His legs were stiff from driving and he moved slowly. Derek made him stand by the back of the truck while he went back to his patrol car to run the license. Jimmy stood there in the hot sun, confused and worried. He hadn't done anything wrong. Why was this happening? When Derek came back, his attitude had gotten worse. Jimmy's record was completely clean. Not even a parking ticket. That almost annoyed Derek more. He'd been hoping for something, anything, to justify what he was already planning to do. "I'm going to search your vehicle," Derek announced. "But officer—" "I haven't done anything wrong," Jimmy said, his voice cracking slightly. "That's for me to decide, old man," Derek shot back. There was something nasty in his voice now. "You people always got some story. Big envelope of cash? You're probably buying drugs or something." Jimmy felt his face flush with shame and anger. "You people!" He'd heard those words before many times in his life. "Officer, I'm a veteran. I served this country. That money is for my wife's medical procedure. I have the bank withdrawal slip right here." Derek snatched the envelope from the passenger seat. He counted the money right there on the hood of Jimmy's truck. $8,500 exactly. His eyes lit up. This was more than he'd expected. "This is suspicious," Derek said, his mind already working on his story. "Large amount of unreported cash, nervous behavior, can't explain where it came from." "I just told you where it came from." Jimmy's voice rose, desperation creeping in. "I have the receipt. I have the hospital papers about my wife's surgery." "Calm down," Derek ordered, his hand moving toward his belt in a subtle threat. "I'm seizing this money under civil asset forfeiture. If it's legitimate, you can file paperwork to get it back." Jimmy felt like the ground was disappearing under his feet. "Please, officer, please, my wife needs this surgery. She's sick. This is all we have." Derek wasn't listening anymore. He'd already decided. He pulled out a property receipt form and scribbled something on it quickly. He handed Jimmy a copy and pocketed the envelope. "You're free to go," Derek said. "Here's your warning for following too close to the vehicle ahead of you." I wasn't following anyone close, Jimmy protested, but Derek was already walking back to his patrol car. Jimmy stood there on the side of the road holding a useless piece of paper, watching the police car drive away with his life savings. Cars zoomed past him. The sun was still beating down, but Jimmy felt cold all over. He got back in his truck and just sat there for a long time. His hands weren't shaking from his condition anymore. They were shaking from rage and helplessness. He'd fought for this country. He'd worked hard his whole life. He'd followed every rule, paid every tax, never caused trouble. And in 5 minutes, a cop with a badge had taken everything from him. What hurt most wasn't just losing the money. It was the way Derek had looked at him. Like he was nothing. Like his life didn't matter. Like his wife's surgery didn't matter. Jimmy had seen that look before many times, but it never stopped hurting. Finally, he started the truck and began the long drive home. He didn't know how he was going to tell Helen. He didn't know what they were going to do about her surgery. All he knew was that something very wrong had just happened, and he felt powerless to stop it. The envelope with $8,500 sat in Derek Lansing's patrol car. Derek was already planning where he'd deposit it. He'd done this before. The trick was to wait a few weeks, let things cool down, then move the money carefully. Old people rarely fought back. They were too scared of the system. But Derek had made one mistake that day. He'd judged Jimmy Crawford by his age and his skin color. He'd assumed this elderly veteran would be just like the others, too frightened and too tired to fight. He didn't know that Jimmy had a daughter who was a lawyer. He didn't know that a passing motorist had noticed the stop and thought it looked wrong. He didn't know that his own actions, his own greed, had just started a chain of events that would destroy his life. As Jimmy drove home in silence, and as Derek drove away counting his stolen money in his mind, neither man knew that this afternoon would change everything. The wheels of justice turn slowly sometimes, but they were already beginning to turn. Part 2. A Daughter's Fury. The sound of Jimmy's truck pulling into the driveway was different that evening. Helen Crawford knew her husband's patterns after 48 years of marriage. She could tell when something was wrong just by how he closed the car door. She met him at the front door. One look at his face told her everything and nothing at the same time. Jimmy's eyes were red, his shoulders slumped, and he was walking like he'd aged 10 years since morning. "Baby, what happened?" Helen asked, her hand going to her chest. Jimmy couldn't speak at first. He just shook his head and walked to the kitchen table, sitting down heavily in his usual chair. When he finally found his voice, it came out broken. "It's gone, Helen, all of it. The money for your surgery, it's gone." Helen's legs went weak. She sat down across from him. "What do you mean, gone? Did you get robbed?" "Yes," Jimmy said bitterly. "By a cop." He told her everything. Every detail of the traffic stop. Every word Derek had said. The way he'd looked at the money, the way he'd spoken to Jimmy like he was dirt under his shoe. Helen listened with growing horror and anger. "We need to call Monica," Helen said immediately. "Right now." Monica Crawford Williams was their only daughter, and she'd grown up watching her parents struggle with dignity through every hardship life threw at them. She'd put herself through college, then law school, driven by a fire to fight the kinds of injustices her parents' generation had endured quietly. Now at 41, she was a civil rights attorney in Atlanta, with a reputation for taking on difficult cases. The phone rang 4 times before Monica answered. She was in her office, finishing up paperwork from a case. "Hey, Daddy," she said warmly. "How did your appointment go?" "Baby girl," Jimmy's voice cracked. "Something bad happened today." Monica's entire body tensed. She'd heard her father upset before, but never like this. "What's wrong?" "Is Mom okay?" "Your mother's fine, but—" Jimmy struggled to continue. Helen took the phone. "Monica, a police officer stole our money today. All of it, the money for my surgery." "What?" Monica was already grabbing her notepad and pen. "Tell me everything. Every single detail. Don't leave anything out." For the next 40 minutes, Monica listened, took notes, and asked sharp questions. What was the officer's name? What did the receipt say? Did anyone else see what happened? Did her father have the bank withdrawal slip? The hospital paperwork? "Daddy," Monica said, her voice steady but cold with anger. "This isn't just civil asset forfeiture abuse. This is theft. What you're describing, the way he spoke to you, the racial comments, the fact that he didn't follow proper procedure, this is a federal civil rights violation." Jimmy felt a small spark of hope for the first time since the incident. "Can we get the money back?" We're going to do more than that, Monica promised. I'm driving up tomorrow morning. Don't touch anything. Keep that receipt he gave you. Find every piece of paper related to that money, the withdrawal, Mom's surgery, everything. And Daddy, I need you to write down exactly what happened while it's fresh in your mind. Every word he said, especially the comments about you people. That night, Monica barely slept. She was researching case law, federal statutes, and the Millbrook Police Department's history. What she found made her blood boil. There had been complaints before, several of them, always dismissed, always cleared by internal investigations. The next morning, Monica made the 3-hour drive to her parents' house. She found her father sitting at the kitchen table with a handwritten account of everything that happened. His writing was shaky but detailed. Monica read it carefully, her jaw tightening with each line. When she finished, she looked up at her father. Daddy, did you know someone recorded part of the traffic stop? Jimmy looked shocked. What? Who? I did some digging this morning. I called the local news station and asked if anyone had sent in any tips about police incidents on that highway yesterday. A driver named Thomas Chen saw the stop. He said something felt wrong about it, so he recorded the last part on his phone while he was stopped at a red light nearby. He submitted it to the station, but they haven't reviewed it yet. Monica had already contacted Mr. Chen and gotten a copy of the video. It was only 90 seconds long, but it was damning. You could see Derek counting the money on the hood of the truck. You could see Jimmy's body language, the pleading gestures. You couldn't hear the words, but you could see everything you needed to see. This changes everything, Monica said. Her first move was to file a formal complaint with the Millbrook Police Department. She drove to the station that afternoon with her father, carrying a folder thick with documentation. She presented everything to the desk sergeant professionally and firmly. The sergeant, a tired-looking man in his 50s, took the complaint with barely concealed skepticism. Ma'am, Officer Lansing is one of our best. If he seized money, I'm sure he had good reason. My father is a 73-year-old veteran with a clean record, Monica said, her voice sharp. He had bank withdrawal slips, hospital documentation, and was going exactly the speed limit. The only reason given for the seizure was that the money was suspicious. That's not probable cause. That's profiling. I'll forward this to Internal Affairs, the sergeant said dismissively. Monica leaned forward. You do that. And while you're at it, you should know I'm also filing complaints with the FBI's Civil Rights Division, the Department of Justice, and I'm prepared to go to the media if necessary. The sergeant's face changed slightly. The FBI? The FBI, Monica confirmed. Because what happened to my father wasn't just bad policing. It was a federal crime. That evening, Monica drafted a detailed complaint to the FBI. She included everything: her father's statement, the video from Mr. Chen, the bank records, the hospital documentation proving the money's legitimate purpose, and a timeline of Derek Lansing's career, including previous complaints against him. She also included something else. Using her legal database access, she'd pulled every civil asset forfeiture case filed by Derek Lansing in the past 2 years. The pattern was obvious. 70% of his seizures involved Black or Hispanic drivers. The amounts were always under $10,000, enough to hurt, but not enough to make lawyers take cases on contingency. Most victims never fought back. He's been doing this for years, Monica told her parents that night, targeting people who he thinks won't fight back, people who are scared of the system. Elderly people, immigrants, people who don't speak perfect English. Jimmy felt sick. How many people has he done this to? At least 15 that I can document, Monica said. Probably more who never reported it. Helen reached across the table and squeezed her husband's hand. So what happens now? Monica looked at both her parents with determination. Now we wait. I've sent everything to the FBI. I've also reached out to a contact I have at the Department of Justice. If they take this seriously, and I think they will, they'll open an investigation. How long will that take? Jimmy asked. Could be weeks. Could be months, Monica admitted. Federal investigations move slowly. But once they start, they're thorough. If Derek Lansing has been doing what I think he's been doing, they'll find it. And the money? Helen's voice was small. My surgery. Monica's expression softened. Mom, I'm going to cover the surgery. Consider it a loan if you want, but you're getting that procedure done next week as scheduled. Baby, we can't ask you to do that, Jimmy protested. You're not asking. I'm telling you, Monica said firmly. Derek Lansing doesn't get to hurt you twice. You're getting Mom the care she needs, and then we're going to make sure he never does this to anyone else ever again. That night, after Monica had gone to bed in her old childhood room, Jimmy and Helen sat together on their porch. The evening was cool and the crickets were singing. "You raised a fighter," Helen said softly. Jimmy nodded, feeling proud and grateful and still angry all at once. "She gets it from you." What they didn't know was that at that very moment, 400 miles away in a federal office building, an FBI agent named Carmen Rodriguez was reviewing her emails. She'd just opened Monica's complaint, and as she read through it, her eyes widened. This wasn't just another case. This was exactly what her division had been looking for. A clear pattern, documented evidence, and a victim willing to stand up and fight. Carmen Rodriguez forwarded the email to her supervisor with a simple note. "We need to move on this immediately." The investigation into Derek Lansing was about to begin. Part 3. Derek's pattern. FBI Special Agent Carmen Rodriguez had been with the Civil Rights Division for 12 years. She'd seen every kind of police misconduct you could imagine, but something about Monica's complaint caught her attention immediately. It wasn't just the details of one incident. It was the bigger picture Monica had painted. Carmen opened the file on her computer and started pulling threads. First, she ran a basic background check on Officer Derek Lansing, 42 years old, been with Millbrook PD for 11 years, married, 2 kids, owned a house in a decent neighborhood. On paper, he looked like an average cop. But when Carmen started digging into his service record, things got interesting. Derek had received 3 commendations for good police work in his first 5 years. Then something changed. The complaints started rolling in. Not a lot at first, just 1 or 2, but over the past 3 years, the number had increased. Carmen pulled up the internal affairs files. 7 formal complaints in 3 years. Every single one had been investigated and cleared. The pattern was always the same. Civilian claims excessive force or improper conduct. Derek denies it, no witnesses. Investigation concludes insufficient evidence. Case closed. Interesting, Carmen muttered to herself. She'd seen this before. Some departments protected their own no matter what. Internal investigations that were designed to clear officers rather than hold them accountable. But what really caught Carmen's eye was the civil asset forfeiture data. She pulled up every seizure Derek had made in the past 18 months. The spreadsheet loaded on her screen and her eyebrows went up. $47,000. Derek Lansing had seized $47,000 in cash over 18 months. That was significantly higher than any other officer in his department. In fact, it was higher than some entire departments his size. Carmen started analyzing the cases one by one. The pattern was clear as day once you knew what to look for. 15 seizures total. 11 of them involved black drivers. 2 were Hispanic. Only 2 were white, and those cases had actually been legitimate drug busts with arrests. The rest? Traffic stops. Minor violations or no violations at all. Small amounts of cash, usually between $2,000 and $8,000. Just enough to hurt. Just enough to steal, but not enough to make it worth hiring a lawyer to fight back. "You're a predator," Carmen said quietly, looking at Derek's photo on her screen. "You figured out the system and you're using it to rob people." But here's what really made Carmen's instincts fire up. When she cross-referenced Derek's seizures with the department's evidence logs, 5 of them weren't properly documented. The paperwork existed, but the money had never made it into the evidence room. 5 seizures totaling $21,000 had simply disappeared. Carmen picked up her phone and called her partner, Agent Michael Torres. "Mike, I need you to run financial records on a subject. Police officer in Millbrook. I'm sending you his details now." "What are we looking for?" Mike asked. "Unexplained deposits," Carmen said. "Cash deposits specifically. This guy's been seizing money from traffic stops and I think he's pocketing it." "I'll get the warrant started," Mike replied. He'd worked with Carmen long enough to trust her instincts. While Mike worked on the financial angle, Carmen made another call, this time to the Millbrook Police Department. But she didn't call internal affairs. She called the rookie who'd filed a completely unrelated report last week. His name was Tyler Bennett, and something in his report had caught her eye. It was too honest, too detailed, too concerned with doing things right. That kind of cop might be useful. Meanwhile, Derek Lansing was having a good week. The $8,000 he'd taken from Jimmy Crawford was sitting in his safe deposit box, waiting to be moved. Derek had a system. He'd wait 3 weeks, then deposit the money in small amounts into his wife's account. She handled the family finances and never asked questions. That evening, Derek was at Murphy's Bar, a cop hangout on the edge of town. He was on his third beer, feeling relaxed and satisfied. His partner, Officer Randy Mitchell, was sitting next to him, and a couple of other guys from the department were at nearby tables. "You should have seen this old guy yesterday," Derek said, his words slightly slurred, hands shaking, whole envelope of cash just sitting there. "Easiest $8,000 I ever made," Randy laughed uncomfortably. He'd worked with Derek for 2 years and had figured out what he was doing about 6 months in. Randy had never participated, but he'd never reported it either. That made him complicit, and he knew it. "You're gonna get caught one of these days," Randy said, trying to make it sound like a joke. "Who's gonna catch me?" Derek scoffed. "Some 70-year-old black guy? They never fight back. They're too scared. And even if they complain, IA always clears me. I know how to write a report." What Derek didn't know was that sitting 3 tables away, nursing a soda because he was still on probation, was Officer Tyler Bennett. Tyler was 24 years old, fresh from the academy, and still believed that being a cop meant helping people. Tyler had been listening for the past 10 minutes, and his stomach was churning. He'd heard rumors about Derek, whispers in the locker room, but this was the first time he'd heard him actually admit to stealing. Tyler's grandfather had been a police officer in Detroit. Tyler had joined the force because of him, because his grandfather had always talked about duty and honor and protecting people. If his grandfather could hear Derek talking right now, he would be disgusted. Tyler finished his drink and left quietly. Nobody noticed him go. He sat in his car in the parking lot for a long time, hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to decide what to do. He knew what could happen to cops who reported other cops. He'd be labeled a snitch. Life at the department would become hell. He might even be driven out of the job he'd worked so hard to get. But he kept thinking about that old veteran Derek had robbed. He kept thinking about his grandfather. And he kept thinking about what kind of cop he wanted to be. Back in her FBI office, Carmen Rodriguez was going through Derek's financials, and everything was falling into place. Derek and his wife Brenda made a combined income of about $92,000 a year. Comfortable but not extravagant. Yet their spending patterns told a different story. In the past 18 months, Derek had made 14 cash deposits into his personal checking account. The amounts varied, $1,000 here, $1,500 there, $2,000 somewhere else. The deposits were spaced out, never in any obvious pattern, but when Carmen added them up, they totaled $19,800. Almost $20,000 in unexplained cash deposits that perfectly matched the gap in Derek's evidence logs. "I've got you," Carmen said softly. She started building a timeline. She matched dates of traffic stops with dates of deposits. Not exact matches, because Derek was smart enough to wait a few weeks. But the correlation was there. After every seizure, within 2 to 4 weeks, money would show up in his account. Carmen also found something else. Derek had opened a safe deposit box at a bank 2 towns over. Not at his regular bank, a different one entirely where nobody knew him. The box had been opened 14 months ago, right around the time his seizures had started increasing. "You're using it as a holding spot," Carmen realized. "Take the money, stash it in the box, wait for things to cool down, then slowly deposit it." Her phone rang. It was Mike. "Carmen, we got something," he said. "I pulled phone records. Our guy's been texting with another officer, Randy Mitchell. Some of the messages are coded, but it's pretty obvious what they're talking about. They're dividing money." Carmen felt a surge of satisfaction. This wasn't just one dirty cop. This was a conspiracy. That made it a federal case, no question. "How many messages?" she asked. "Dozens," Mike replied. "Going back almost a year. They're careful, use phrases like collection day and you're cut. But it's clear enough." "And Carmen, some of the messages are about specific stops. They're joking about the people they robbed." Carmen felt her anger rising. These weren't just corrupt cops. They were cruel. They were enjoying it. They were laughing about ruining people's lives. "Start preparing arrest warrants," Carmen said. "We're moving on this soon." "How soon?" "Days, not weeks," Carmen replied. "I want to catch them before they figure out we're coming." That night, while Derek Lansing slept peacefully next to his wife, while Jimmy Crawford tossed and turned thinking about his stolen money, while Monica worked late preparing her parents' case, the FBI was building an airtight prosecution. They had the financial records. They had the text messages. They had the evidence room discrepancies. They had the video. They had the victims, and they were about to get one more thing. Because at 11:30 that night, Officer Tyler Bennett pulled into the parking lot of a 24-hour diner on the highway. He sat in a back booth, ordered coffee he didn't drink, and waited. 20 minutes later, a woman in casual clothes sat down across from him. She showed him her FBI credentials. "Agent Rodriguez," she said. "Thank you for calling the tip line." Tyler swallowed hard. There was no going back now. "I'm probably ending my career by doing this. Maybe," Carmen said honestly. "Or maybe you're saving it. Depends on what kind of cop you want to be." Tyler took a breath and started talking. He told her everything he'd heard at the bar. He told her about the rumors in the department. Part 4. The rookie's conscience. Tyler Bennett couldn't sleep that night after meeting with Agent Rodriguez. He kept replaying the conversation at the bar, kept seeing Derek's smug face as he bragged about stealing from an elderly veteran. Tyler lay in his small apartment staring at the ceiling, wondering if he'd just destroyed his own career before it really even started. He'd become a cop for the right reasons. His grandfather, Robert Bennett, had been a Detroit police officer for 30 years. Tyler had grown up on stories of his grandfather helping people, solving problems, being a positive force in the community. When Grandpa Robert passed away 2 years ago, Tyler had been wearing his police academy uniform at the funeral. It was one of the proudest moments of his life. Now, 6 months into the job, Tyler was learning that not every cop was like his grandfather. Some wore the badge for completely different reasons. The next morning at the station, Tyler felt like everyone could see right through him. Like they all knew what he'd done, but nobody looked at him differently. The morning briefing was normal. Derek walked in laughing about something, got his coffee, sat down like he didn't have a care in the world. "Bennett," Derek called out. "You look tired. Rough night?" Tyler forced a smile. "Didn't sleep great." "You'll get used to the shift work," Derek said, not actually caring about the answer. What Tyler didn't know was that at that exact moment, 2 floors above them in an unmarked office, Agent Rodriguez was meeting with the Millbrook Police Chief Harold Thompson. Chief Thompson was in his early 60s, planning to retire in 2 years, and the last thing he wanted was a federal investigation into his department. "Chief Thompson," Carmen said professionally, sitting across from his desk, "I'm here to inform you that the FBI is conducting an investigation into potential civil rights violations and corruption within your department." The chief's face went pale. "What kind of violations?" "At this stage, I can't disclose details," Carmen replied. "But I need you to understand something. This is a federal investigation. I need your cooperation. But I also need you to understand that if you interfere, if you tip off anyone who might be under investigation, you'll be charged with obstruction." Chief Thompson sat back heavily in his chair. He'd been a cop for 40 years. He knew when something serious was happening. "Is this about Officer Lansing?" Carmen kept her expression neutral, but internally she noted that the chief had gone straight to Derek's name. "Why would you think that?" The chief sighed, looking older suddenly. "I'm not stupid, Agent Rodriguez. I've seen the complaints. I've seen his seizure numbers, but internal affairs kept clearing him and I didn't have solid proof of anything." "That's about to change," Carmen said. "I'll need access to your evidence room, your financial records, and your internal affairs files. Today." The chief nodded slowly. "You'll have it. But Agent Rodriguez, there are good cops in this department. Good people. Whatever Derek's done, don't paint everyone with the same brush." "I don't intend to," Carmen assured him. "But if other officers knew what was happening and didn't report it, that's a problem too." As Carmen left the chief's office, Tyler was downstairs in the locker room, changing for patrol. Randy Mitchell walked in, looking stressed. "Hey, Bennett," Randy said, his voice low. "You haven't heard any weird talk around here, have you? Any feds asking questions?" Tyler's heart jumped, but he kept his face casual. "Feds? No, why?" Randy shook his head. "Just paranoid, I guess. Forget I said anything." But Tyler noticed Randy immediately went to Derek's locker and left a small note inside. Something was making them nervous. Tyler wondered if somehow they'd found out about the investigation. But how could they? He'd only talked to Agent Rodriguez last night. What Tyler didn't know was that Derek had noticed something odd that morning. When he'd logged into the department computer system to file his daily report, there was a notification that his files had been accessed by an administrator. That wasn't normal. Derek's instincts, honed by years of covering his tracks, were tingling. "Randy," Derek said when he found his partner in the parking lot. "Something's off." "What do you mean?" "My files were accessed last night." "By someone with high-level clearance." Randy's face went white. "You think Internal Affairs is looking at us again?" "I don't know," Derek said slowly. "But I'm going to move some money around just to be safe. Maybe take a few days off." Inside the station, Agent Rodriguez was in the evidence room with a forensic accountant from the FBI. They were going through every seizure log from the past 2 years. The discrepancies were even worse than Carmen had thought. "This is sloppy," the accountant said, shaking his head. "Really sloppy. Look at this. Money seized on April 12th, $4,000. Logged here, but the evidence bag is empty. There's a note saying it was transferred to the county, but there's no transfer paperwork." "How many like that?" Carmen asked. The accountant scrolled through his tablet. "At least 8 that I can see right away. Probably more once we dig deeper. We're talking about at least $30,000 that should be here and isn't." Carmen pulled out her phone and called her office. "Mike, we need to move faster. Our subject is getting nervous. I want surveillance on him starting today, and I want to execute the warrants by the end of the week." "That's pushing it," Mike said. "The judge won't like being rushed." "Then convince him," Carmen said. "Because if Derek Lansing realizes we're coming, he's going to run, and he's going to take evidence with him." That afternoon, Tyler was on patrol driving through downtown Millbrook. When his radio crackled, it was Derek's voice. "Unit 12 to dispatch. I'm going to be taking some personal time. Family emergency. Need someone to cover my shifts for the next few days." Tyler's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Derek was running, or at least he was trying to get ahead of whatever was coming. Tyler wanted to call Agent Rodriguez, but he couldn't do it from his patrol car. The radio system recorded everything. Instead, Tyler finished his shift, went home, and called from his personal phone. "Agent Rodriguez," he said when she answered. "Derek just called in for personal time. He said family emergency, but I don't think that's true. I think he knows something's wrong." Carmen cursed quietly. "Okay, thank you for letting me know. Tyler, I need to ask you something. The evidence room at your station. How easy would it be for someone to access it after hours?" "Pretty easy," Tyler admitted. "It's supposed to be locked, but half the supervisors know the code, and the camera system doesn't cover the inside of the room. Just the door. So if someone wanted to go in there and destroy evidence, they could do it tonight," Tyler finished. "Should I watch it?" "No," Carmen said firmly. "You stay away from there. You've done enough, and I don't want you getting caught in the middle of this. We'll handle it." But Carmen was worried. If Derek went into that evidence room and shredded documents or tampered with evidence, it could damage the case. She called the chief. "Chief Thompson, I need you to change the evidence room access codes immediately and station someone there overnight. Don't tell anyone why. Just do it." The chief heard the urgency in her voice. "Consider it done." That night, Derek Lansing sat in his truck outside the police station at 2 a.m. He'd been planning to slip in, access the evidence room, and remove any paperwork that might be problematic. But when he tried his access code, it didn't work. The lock stayed red. "Damn it," Derek muttered. "They'd changed the codes." Why would they change the codes? His heart was pounding now. Something was definitely wrong. He thought about the safe deposit box 2 towns over. That money was clean, couldn't be traced to him. But the cash at home, the $2,300 in his bedroom closet that he'd just taken last week from a traffic stop, that needed to disappear. Derek drove home quickly. His wife Brenda was asleep. He went to the closet, pulled out the cash, and stood there trying to figure out what to do with it. He couldn't deposit it now, couldn't keep it here if the cops or the FBI came looking. He ended up driving to his brother's house 30 miles away and hiding it in his brother's garage, tucked inside a toolbox. His brother didn't need to know. Derek would come back for it later, after whatever this was blew over, but it wasn't going to blow over. At that exact moment, a federal judge was reviewing Carmen Rodriguez's warrant applications. The judge, a no-nonsense woman named Patricia Kwan, read through the evidence carefully. Financial records showing unexplained deposits. Text messages discussing collections and cuts. Evidence room logs with missing money. Witness statements from victims. Video footage. Testimony from another officer about hearing direct admissions. Judge Kwan signed the warrants at 4:30 in the morning. Arrest warrants for Derek Lansing and Randy Mitchell, search warrants for their homes, vehicles, and personal bank records, and one more warrant for the safe deposit box at First National Bank in Brookshire. Execute these immediately, Judge Kwan told the agent who picked them up, before these officers have time to destroy more evidence. As dawn broke over Millbrook, Derek Lansing was pacing in his kitchen drinking coffee, trying to figure out his next move. Should he call in sick for more days? Should he just resign and move away? Should he get a lawyer? He never got a chance to decide. Because at 6:47 a.m. there was a knock on his door that would change his life forever. Part 5. The Walls Close. In 3 days after Derek had stolen Jimmy's money, he started noticing things. Small things at first. A black sedan parked down the street from his house. The same sedan he'd seen near the station. Then again at the grocery store parking lot, Derek told himself he was being paranoid. But he'd been a cop long enough to recognize surveillance when he saw it. Someone was watching him. At the station, things felt different too. Chief Thompson had been acting strange, not making eye contact with Derek in the hallways. The evidence room codes had been changed without explanation. And there was something in the air, a tension Derek couldn't quite name. "You feel it too?" Randy asked him on the third day. They were sitting in Randy's patrol car parked behind a closed gas station talking quietly. "Yeah," Derek admitted. "Something's up." "Maybe we should cool it for a while," Randy suggested. "No more pickups. Just regular police work." Derek laughed bitterly. "Bit late for that, don't you think?" Randy shifted uncomfortably. He'd taken about $15,000 over the past year from Derek's operations. It had started small, just Derek offering him a few hundred here and there to look the other way. Then Randy had started participating more actively. Now he was in too deep to get out. "You think someone reported us?" Randy asked. "If they did, we'd already be arrested," Derek said, trying to convince himself as much as Randy. "This is probably just routine, maybe federal audit of the department or something." But Derek didn't really believe that. He'd been sleeping badly, jumping at every noise. His wife Brenda had noticed. "Honey, what's wrong?" She'd asked him that morning. "You've been acting weird all week." "Work stuff," Derek had mumbled. "Just work stuff." Brenda Lansing had been married to Derek for 16 years. She was a nurse working night shifts at the hospital. She managed their money, paid the bills, and honestly never asked too many questions about where Derek's occasional bonuses came from. She'd assumed they were legitimate overtime payments or department rewards. Now, watching her husband pace the kitchen at 5 in the morning, drinking his third cup of coffee, she was starting to worry. "Derek, if something's wrong, you need to tell me," Brenda said. "Nothing's wrong," Derek snapped, then immediately felt guilty. "Sorry, I'm just stressed. There might be some changes at the department, that's all." That afternoon, Derek made a decision. He needed to get to that safe deposit box and move the money. All of it. The $8,000 from Jimmy Crawford, plus the other $13,000 he'd been accumulating. $21,000 sitting in a bank 2 towns over. He drove to Brookshire during his lunch break, trying to look casual, but feeling like everyone was watching him. The black sedan was 3 cars behind him. Derek's hands were sweating on the steering wheel. He pulled into the bank parking lot and the sedan drove past. Derek sat in his truck for a long moment watching the mirrors. The sedan was parked down the street. Definitely watching him, Derek got out anyway. What choice did he have? He walked into the bank, nodded at the teller he'd come to recognize, and headed toward the safe deposit area. "I'm sorry, sir," the bank manager said, stepping in front of him. "We're having some technical issues with the safe deposit system today. We won't be able to access the boxes until tomorrow." Derek's blood ran cold. "Technical issues? What kind of technical issues?" "System maintenance," the manager said smoothly. Too smoothly. Sorry for the inconvenience, Derek knew. He knew right then that they'd frozen his access. The FBI was already here. They probably already had the contents. His money, his evidence, his guilt, all sitting in some federal evidence bag. He walked out of the bank in a daze. The black sedan was still there. Derek got in his truck and just sat there trying to breathe, trying to think. Everything was falling apart. That evening, 2 men in suits came to the Millbrook police station. They asked to speak with Chief Thompson, and they were in his office for over an hour. Derek watched through the window of the break room, his gut churning. When the men left, the chief called Derek into his office. Derek walked in, trying to look confident. "What's up, Chief?" "Sit down, Derek," Chief Thompson said. His voice was tired. Derek sat. The chief looked at him for a long moment, and Derek could see disappointment in his eyes. That scared Derek more than anger would have. Those men who were just here, they were from the FBI, the chief said. Derek's heart was hammering, but he kept his face neutral. FBI? What did they want? They wanted to know about your arrest record, your seizure reports, your service history, the chief said. Derek, they're investigating you. You know that, right? Derek wanted to deny everything, to act outraged, to play the innocent cop being targeted by overzealous feds. But looking at the chief's face, he knew it wouldn't work. The chief knew. Maybe he'd always known. Chief, Don't, Chief Thompson held up a hand. Don't lie to me, not now. I've been covering for you, looking the other way, telling myself the complaints weren't credible, but I can't do that anymore. The FBI has evidence, Derek, real evidence, and they're coming for you. Derek felt like the floor was tilting under him. When? I don't know, the chief said. Could be days. Could be hours. But Derek, if you've done what I think you've done, you need to get a lawyer. Today. Right now. Derek left the office in a fog. He drove home, his hands shaking on the wheel. When he walked through the door, Brenda took one look at his face and knew something terrible had happened. Derek, you're scaring me, she said. What's going on? He couldn't hold it in anymore. He sat down at the kitchen table and put his head in his hands. I messed up, Brenda. I messed up bad. What did you do? I took money, Derek said, his voice barely above a whisper. From traffic stops. I've been taking money, and now the FBI knows. Brenda stared at her husband like she'd never seen him before. You stole money? From who? People I pulled over? People with cash. I'd seize it, say it was suspicious, and then I'd keep it. Oh my God. Brenda sat down hard in a chair. How much? I don't know. Maybe 60, 70,000 over the past couple years. Brenda's face went white. $70,000? Derek, that's not a mistake. That's not a one-time thing. That's who you are. No, baby, it's not like that. Where's the money? Brenda asked, her voice cold now. Some of it I deposited. Some is in a safe deposit box that the FBI probably already has. Some I hid at my brother's place. Brenda stood up, her nurse's instinct for self-preservation kicking in. I need to call a lawyer. For me. Because they're going to think I knew about this. You didn't know, Derek said desperately. How is anyone going to believe that? Brenda's voice was rising now. Money gets deposited in my account, and I'm supposed to say I never questioned it. Derek, you've destroyed our lives. She walked out of the kitchen, and Derek could hear her on the phone in the bedroom, her voice urgent and scared. Derek sat alone at the table, and for the first time the full weight of what he'd done hit him. He'd stolen from people who couldn't fight back. He'd abused his power. He'd broken every oath he'd taken, and now it was all catching up to him. Derek pulled out his phone and scrolled through old text messages with Randy. All those jokes about collection days and bonus money. All that evidence, sitting right there in his phone. Had the FBI already pulled his phone records? Probably. He thought about deleting everything, but it was too late for that. Digital footprints never really disappeared. The FBI would have everything already. That night, Derek barely slept. He lay next to Brenda, who had turned her back to him and wouldn't speak. He kept thinking about prison. How long would he get? 5 years? 10 years? 20? He thought about his kids, 12 and 14, and how they'd have to go to school knowing their dad was a criminal. He thought about the people he'd stolen from. That old black veteran, Jimmy Crawford, the look on his face when Derek had taken his money. Derek had felt powerful in that moment. Now he just felt sick. At 3 in the morning, Derek got up and went to his computer. He started researching lawyers, federal charges, plea deals. The sentences for what he'd done were severe. Theft of government property. Deprivation of rights under color of law. If they charged him with a conspiracy, if Randy flipped on him, it could be even worse. Derek heard a noise and looked up. Brenda was standing in the doorway watching him. Are you going to run? She asked. Derek had thought about it. He had some money his brother was holding. He could get in his truck right now and just drive. Mexico, maybe, disappear. But where would that leave his family? And how far could he really get with the FBI watching him? No, Derek said finally. I'm not going to run. Good, Brenda said. Because I need you to face this. I need you to tell the truth, whatever it is. Our kids deserve that much. Derek nodded, tears in his eyes for the first time. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't fix this, Brenda said. Nothing fixes this. She went back to bed. And Derek sat in the dark, waiting for the dawn, waiting for the knock on the door he knew was coming. At FBI headquarters in the regional office, Agent Carmen Rodriguez was reviewing the final checklist with her team. They had everything they needed. The warrants were signed. The evidence was overwhelming. Tomorrow morning they would execute the arrests. Derek Lansing and Randy Mitchell, simultaneous arrests at 06:45 hours. Carmen briefed her team. We hit both houses at the same time, so neither of them can warn the... Part 6. The knock came at exactly 6:47 in the morning. Derek had been awake for hours, sitting in the dark kitchen with a cold cup of coffee. He'd heard the cars pull up outside. Multiple vehicles. He'd looked out the window and seen the dark SUVs, the agents in tactical vests taking positions around his house. So when the knock came, hard and official, Derek wasn't surprised. He was almost relieved. The waiting was over. FBI. We have a warrant. Derek stood slowly, his legs shaky. Behind him, he heard Brenda gasp. She was standing at the top of the stairs in her bathrobe, her hand over her mouth. Stay upstairs with the kids, Derek said quietly. Don't let them see this. He walked to the door and opened it. Agent Carmen Rodriguez stood there with 5 other agents behind her. She held up a badge and a document. Derek Lansing. I'm Special Agent Rodriguez with the FBI. We have a warrant for your arrest. Derek nodded, his throat too tight to speak. Turn around and place your hands behind your back, Carmen instructed. Derek did as he was told. The handcuffs clicked around his wrists, cold metal against his skin. It was surreal. He'd put handcuffs on dozens of people. Now he was the one being arrested in his own home, in his pajama pants and old police academy t-shirt. Derek Lansing, you're under arrest for theft of government property, deprivation of rights under color of law, wire fraud, and conspiracy against rights, Carmen read from the warrant. You have the right to remain silent. Derek heard the words, but they seemed to come from far away. Upstairs, he could hear his daughter crying, his son asking what was happening, Brenda trying to keep them in their rooms. Do you understand these rights? Carmen asked. Yes, Derek whispered. As they walked him out to a waiting SUV, Derek saw his neighbors standing in their yards watching. Mrs. Peterson from next door, the couple with the new baby across the street, the teenager who mowed his lawn, all of them watching Derek Lansing, the cop, being arrested by the FBI. His career was over. His reputation was destroyed. His family was in ruins. And it had all happened in less than 5 minutes. At the same moment across town, Randy Mitchell was having an almost identical experience. He'd been asleep when the FBI came. His wife had answered the door, and when she called up to Randy, he'd thought it was a joke at first. Then he'd heard Agent Torres identify himself, and Randy's world had collapsed. Randy had broken down immediately. As they cuffed him, he was already talking. I'll tell you everything. Derek made me do it. I'll testify. I'll cooperate, please. Agent Torres remained professional. You'll have time to talk with your lawyer about cooperation, Mr. Mitchell. Back at Derek's house, more agents were executing the search warrant. Brenda had finally gotten the kids dressed and was sitting with them in the living room, all 3 of them in shock. Agents were going through every room, every drawer, every closet. They found Derek's laptop, his personal phone, financial documents. They found $3,000 in cash hidden in a lockbox in the garage. They found bank statements showing the pattern of deposits Carmen had already documented. Mrs. Lansing, Carmen said, sitting down across from Brenda, I want you to know that we don't believe you had knowledge of your husband's crimes, but we need to ask you some questions. Brenda looked at Carmen with hollow eyes. Am I under arrest? No, Carmen said. Not at this time, but we will need your cooperation. What kind of cooperation? Your financial records, your testimony about household income and expenses, anything you observed about your husband's activities. Brenda laughed bitterly. I didn't observe anything. I was working night shifts at the hospital while my husband was out stealing money. I'm a nurse. I save lives, and I married a thief. One of Derek's children, his 14-year-old son Kyle, suddenly spoke up. My dad's not a thief. He's a police officer. He helps people. Carmen looked at the boy with genuine sympathy. This was the hardest part of her job. The families, especially the kids who had no idea who their parents really were. I'm sorry, Carmen said softly. I know this is difficult, At the FBI field office, Derek was being processed. Fingerprints, photographs, property inventory. He was given an orange jumpsuit to change into. His belt, shoes, wallet, watch, wedding ring, all taken away and catalogued. He was placed in a holding cell by himself. The walls were concrete block, painted a depressing beige. There was a metal bench and a toilet. That was it. Derek sat on the bench and put his head in his hands. How had it come to this? He tried to trace back the steps, figure out where he'd gone wrong. It wasn't one big moment. It was 1,000 small choices. The first time he'd taken money 5 years ago, it had been almost accidental. A drug dealer with 10,000 cash, and Derek had skimmed 500 before logging it into evidence. Nobody noticed. It was so easy, then it became easier. Then it became routine. Then it became who he was. A lawyer arrived 2 hours later. Public defender, since Derek couldn't afford private counsel anymore. The lawyer, a tired-looking woman named Patricia Gaines, reviewed the charges with him. Mr. Lansing, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. The evidence against you is substantial. The FBI has financial records, text messages, testimony from other officers, video evidence, and at least 11 victims prepared to testify. 11? Derek felt sick. He'd thought maybe 5 or 6 cases they could prove. They've been investigating you for weeks, Patricia explained. They've identified every seizure you made in the past 2 years and tracked where the money went. They have your safe deposit box contents. They have your bank deposits. And your partner, Randy Mitchell, is already talking about cooperating. Randy's flipping on me? Derek shouldn't have been surprised, but he was. He's trying to, Patricia said. Whether the prosecution accepts his cooperation depends on what he can offer. But Derek, you need to understand something. You're looking at 20 to 35 years in federal prison. These are serious charges. What are my options? Plead guilty and cooperate, hope for a reduced sentence. Or go to trial and likely get convicted with a longer sentence, Patricia said bluntly. Those are your options. There's no magic defense here. You did what they're accusing you of, didn't you? Derek couldn't look at her. Yes, then cooperation is your best bet. Tell them everything. Every seizure, every dollar, every person involved. Give them the complete picture, and maybe you can get down to 15 or 20 years instead of 30. 15 years. Derek was 42 years old. He'd be almost 60 when he got out. His kids would be grown. His marriage would be over. His life as he knew it would be finished. Meanwhile, back at the Millbrook Police Department, Chief Thompson was holding an emergency meeting. Every officer in the department was crammed into the briefing room. The mood was tense and confused. I know you've all heard by now that Officers Lansing and Mitchell were arrested this morning by the FBI, the chief began. I want to address this directly. They're being charged with corruption, theft, and civil rights violations. The investigation is ongoing, and I expect full cooperation from everyone in this department. Are there more arrests coming? Someone asked. I don't know, the chief admitted. If anyone in this room has knowledge of illegal activity, now is the time to come forward. The FBI is not going away. This department is under scrutiny, and we will cooperate fully. Tyler Bennett sat in the back, feeling every eye in the room. Some officers knew he'd talked to the FBI. The word had already spread. Nobody was sitting near him. After the meeting, as Tyler walked to his locker, another officer shouldered past him hard. Snitch, the officer muttered. Tyler kept walking, his jaw tight. This was going to be his life now. Back at the FBI office, Carmen Rodriguez was organizing the evidence for presentation to the prosecutors. Box after box of financial records, statements, recordings. The case against Derek Lansing was airtight. Agent Torres came into her office. I just finished interviewing Randy Mitchell with his lawyer present. He's giving up everything. Names, dates, amounts. He says Derek recruited him about 18 months ago, promised him easy money. How much did Randy take? Carmen asked. He claims about $15,000. We're still verifying that number. Carmen nodded. What about the victims? Have we contacted them all? We're working on it. Some of them are hard to locate. But we've got at least 9 who are willing to testify, including Jimmy Crawford. When Monica got the call from Agent Rodriguez that afternoon, she was in court on another case. She stepped out into the hallway to take it. Ms. Crawford Williams, I wanted to let you know personally that we've arrested Officer Derek Lansing this morning. He's being charged with multiple federal crimes related to the theft from your father. Monica leaned against the wall, feeling a wave of relief and satisfaction. Thank you. Thank you for taking this seriously. Your father's case was the catalyst that helped us build this investigation, Carmen said. His willingness to come forward, your documentation, it made all the difference. There are other victims who didn't report what happened. Your father's courage is going to help them too. After the call, Monica immediately called her parents. Jimmy answered on the first ring. Daddy, they arrested him. The FBI arrested Derek Lansing this morning. Jimmy was quiet for a long moment. Then she heard his voice thick with emotion. Really? They really arrested him? Yes, Daddy, and they found the money. Your money. Part 7. Justice and Reckoning. Derek's bail hearing happened 3 days after his arrest. The federal courtroom was packed with reporters, police officers, and some of Derek's victims. Jimmy Crawford sat in the third row with Monica beside him. The prosecutor, Assistant U.S. Attorney Jennifer Walsh, stood before Judge Patricia Kwan with a thick folder of evidence. Your Honor, the government requests that Derek Lansing be held without bail, she began. He represents a significant flight risk. The defendant has access to stolen funds that we have not yet recovered, including money hidden at his brother's residence. He has demonstrated a pattern of deception and abuse of authority spanning more than 2 years. Additionally, he has expressed awareness of the investigation and has attempted to move and hide assets. Derek's lawyer, Patricia Gaines, tried to argue. Your Honor, my client has roots in this community. He has a wife and 2 children. He's willing to surrender his passport and wear an ankle monitor. Judge Kwan looked at Derek coldly. Mr. Lansing, you were a police officer. You took an oath to protect and serve. Instead, you used your badge to prey on vulnerable people. The evidence presented suggests you stole from at least 11 citizens, targeting elderly and minority individuals who you believed wouldn't fight back. That's not just corruption, that's cruelty. She closed the folder in front of her. Bail is denied. The defendant will remain in federal custody pending trial. Derek's face went white. Brenda, sitting behind him, let out a small sob. His kids weren't in the courtroom. Brenda had made sure of that. As Derek was led out of the courtroom in chains, he made eye contact with Jimmy Crawford for just a moment. Jimmy looked back at him steadily, without anger, without satisfaction, just with the quiet dignity of a man who'd fought for justice and won. In the weeks that followed, the scandal grew. The media coverage was relentless. Local news became national news. Small-town police corruption exposed by FBI appeared on major networks. Derek's story became a symbol of everything wrong with police accountability. The Millbrook Police Department was placed under a Department of Justice consent decree, meaning federal oversight of their policies and practices. Chief Thompson, facing pressure and his own guilt for not acting sooner, announced his early retirement. I failed this community, he said at a press conference, his voice heavy. I saw warning signs and I didn't act strongly enough. I let politics and loyalty to my officers cloud my judgment. I'm sorry to every person who was victimized because I didn't do my job. For Tyler Bennett, life at the department became increasingly difficult. Some officers respected what he'd done, most didn't. He was frozen out of social activities given the worst shifts, partnered with officers who wouldn't speak to him. But Tyler also received attention from outside the department. The FBI contacted him directly. Agent Rodriguez met him for coffee one morning at a diner outside of town. Tyler, I wanted to thank you personally, Carmen said. What you did took real courage. We couldn't have built this case without your testimony about what you overheard. I'm paying for it now, Tyler said tiredly. Half the department won't even look at me. I know, Carmen said. That's actually why I wanted to meet. Have you ever considered federal law enforcement? The FBI is always looking for people with integrity, people willing to do the right thing even when it's hard. Tyler looked up surprised. You're recruiting me? I'm saying we'd be interested if you applied. Carmen smiled. Think about it. Meanwhile, the investigation continued to expand. Randy Mitchell had indeed cooperated fully, providing details about every theft he knew about. His lawyer managed to negotiate a plea deal. In exchange for his testimony against Derek, Randy would serve 5 years in federal prison instead of the 15 he was facing. Derek watched this happen from jail, and it only deepened his bitterness. Randy got a deal while Derek was looking at decades. But Derek's lawyer explained it simply. Randy cooperated immediately. You didn't. That's how it works. As the case progressed, more victims were identified. The FBI's investigation uncovered 13 total victims, not 11. 2 more people came forward after seeing the news coverage. People who hadn't reported the thefts because they didn't think anyone would believe them. One victim was a Hispanic construction worker named Luis Fernandez, who'd been driving home with $3,000 in cash to send to his family in Guatemala. Derek had seized it, claiming Luis was suspicious. Luis had been too afraid to report it because he was worried about his immigration status, even though he was here legally. Another victim was an elderly white woman named Dorothy Mills who'd been carrying $4,000 to pay for her husband's funeral. Derek had taken it, claiming it was evidence in an ongoing investigation. Dorothy had tried to report it, but was told by the department that there was nothing they could do. Each story was heartbreaking. Each story showed Derek's calculated cruelty. Monica worked with the other victims, helping them file civil lawsuits against the department. A class action suit was filed, seeking damages not just for the stolen money but for the emotional trauma and violation of civil rights. The city of Millbrook, facing potential bankruptcy from the lawsuits and unable to defend Derek's actions, settled out of court for $1.2 million to be divided among the victims. It wasn't enough to undo the harm, but it was something. Brenda Lansing filed for divorce 3 months after Derek's arrest. She'd learned things during the investigation that she couldn't forgive. Not just about the money, but about the person Derek had been. The things he'd said about his victims, the pleasure he'd taken in his power over them. "I married someone I thought was a good man," Brenda told her lawyer. "But maybe he never was. Or maybe he changed and I didn't want to see it. Either way, I can't be married to him anymore." Derek's children, Kyle and his younger sister Amy, were enrolled in counseling. The school had been rough on them. Kids can be cruel, and having a father arrested by the FBI made them targets. Kyle especially struggled, angry at his father, angry at the world, not understanding how his hero could turn out to be a criminal. As the trial date approached, Derek's lawyer came to him with the prosecution's offer. "They're willing to offer you a plea deal. Plead guilty to all charges, cooperate fully, allocate at sentencing, and they'll recommend 20 years instead of pushing for 35. Derek stared at her. 20 years? I'll be 62 when I get out. If you go to trial and lose, which you will, you could get 35 years. You'd be 77. Think about it. Derek thought about it for exactly one night. Then he accepted the deal. He would plead guilty. He would admit what he'd done. Because what choice did he have? The evidence was overwhelming. The plea hearing was scheduled for 6 months after his arrest. The courtroom was full again. All of Derek's victims were there. Jimmy Crawford sat in the front row this time. Monica beside him, Helen on.